Good morning and welcome again to another Making Mondays Matter. We are into our second week in February and into our pause, our national pause, as we continue to grapple with all the issues surrounding us. But that's not my focus this morning. My focus this morning is on leadership. Leadership within this virtual environment that we find ourselves. And this is leadership in every aspect of life. I'm not just talking work here. I'm not just talking home. I'm talking leadership in general because we are in an increasingly virtual world. And part of the challenge that it presents to us is the lack of physical contact. For those of you who are leaders, and just in case you are wondering who those are, I'm speaking to you. All of us are called to lead at some point in some place in life. Some of us more so, some of us less so, but we are all leaders in various aspects of life. And so the thought that I'm having this morning surrounding leadership centers around a news report that I heard earlier in relation to many children not attending online classes. And as I heard that, my mind went back to how some of us as adults behave on the virtual and online space. I'm sure that many of you watching can attest to times when, if not yourself, you would have seen a colleague who was in a meeting, whether at work or someplace else, where they were clearly distracted. They may be on the phone, they may be doing something else rather than listening to the person speaking at the time. This similar behavior has now been transferred to the home. And for those of you who are parents with young children in the house, they're also seeing this. And so when it comes to their turn now and they're in front of the same computer listening to a teacher that they may not be too in tune with, they are easily distracted. And remember, they have seen you turn your camera off and do other things while the speaker is talking. And they're too are tempted to do the same. And so this is where leadership comes in. You see, leadership is very much about influence. Leadership is very much about example. And so, as we look at the aspect of leadership within this virtual space, I use the example of the news story of the children in school as a segue into remembering that we all set an example by the things that we do and don't do. And in the virtual space, where physical presence is not possible, it is important that we set the right example. It is important that we influence persons to positive behavior. If you are desirous of others within a virtual space having their cameras on so as to facilitate better communication, then it's important that you have your camera on. If you want persons to be on time for their virtual meetings, then it is important that you be on time for your virtual meetings. And for those of you who are the boss, the manager, the CEO, what you demand of your subordinates, you better be willing to do yourself. Why? Because whereas you may have had physical presence and influence when you were in the office, now that you're in the virtual space, when that camera goes off, that physical presence and influence is no longer there. And the staff member who you may be depending upon to get something done urgently goes about doing their own thing. before coming back to the task that is important. And so, this is why influence and example is so important within the virtual space, because it is almost the only tool left to effect positive leadership. Some may say, from a boss's perspective or a business owner's perspective, that if they're not doing what I want them to do, you can fire them. But that's really taking it to the extreme. Do you really want to go there? Because you have to start over with somebody else and train them to where you want them to be. And that's even harder in this virtual space. So it's important that we work with those around us, making sure that as we are called to lead and as we seek to lead, that we are providing the influences that foster the behavior that we desire, that we are setting the example that others can follow, that will lead the entire community, the entire group to the goals and the successes that we deserve. But it starts with leadership. And so this morning, I want for you to recognize that you have a role in leading those around you. You have a role in leading those in your home. Make sure that you are setting the right example and you are providing good influence. This is David Hicks for Living Successfully. And for those of you who would be seeing this later on YouTube, I encourage you to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you are aware when new content comes out. But until next week, go out and be influential leaders setting good examples.